numbers in your room or wherever you're watching. Did it go up 30%, 50%? Did it double, or does it depend upon what you mean by quote unquote life? The amazing thing is, if you flip forward to give us the answer, if you look at the pace of life expectancy change over the last 100 years, for many, many years, including from 0 BC all the way straight through 1900, we actually saw very little change in life expectancy. In fact, if you look at the chart that we can see here, in developed markets, we improved from 22 years to 46 years for over that 1900-year span, and then exceeded that level of change to go from 46 to actually 78 years in life expectancy between 1900 and 2000. In developing markets, that was even more profound in that 100-year time frame, moving from 26 to 64. Clearly, the impact of our industry has been profound. We are now living twice as long as we have only 100 years ago. Now, there are many advances, of course, if you continue to advance the slides for me. There are many advances that have led to that. And of course, nutrition played a fundamental role. The pharmaceutical industry played a fundamental role. The rising adoption of modern medicine clearly had a dramatic impact. But really, it's been the life sciences sector that has driven this overall level of innovation. And the impact on human life has just been profound. If we look just at two types of cancer, ovarian cancer and bowel cancer, even the innovations in the last decade have been absolutely incredible. We've seen over a 40% improvement in ovarian cancer outcomes in that time frame. We will see a similar effect if we look at bowel cancer. And I'm sure as we consider all of our own families, many of us have been affected, and the impact of innovation in our industry has been profound on human life. So why be excited today? I thought if I could move you continuously through this to the next page, please. There's 4 trends that will continue to propel innovation forward, and I'll touch on each of them. Our industry faces a rising disease burden, which gives us incredible opportunity to innovate. There are incredible new technologies that are proliferating, both in the core aspects of biology, as many of the previous speakers have mentioned, but also in the supporting infrastructure that will allow us to be able to go to another level. We have seen, in addition, an extreme amount of funding come into our area, and I'll show you some of the statistics on this. Which mean that capital is plenty, and there is a lot to fuel the innovation in the industry. And the ecosystem of players that have come into the industry to be able to enable the accelerated pace of innovation is growing. And that creates an enormous amount of excitement in biopharma, and an enormous amount of potential for India as a geography and a region and as a country to be able to lead. And hearing the commitment of the Honorable Prime Minister and the commitment of the Secretary of Pharmaceuticals to that advancement is absolutely inspirational. So let me highlight a few of the opportunities on that front, if you'll advance the page for me. The first thing to realize is that with the expansion of this life expectancy, disease burden continues to grow, but there's a profound shift in the underlying disease burden that is much more now age-related. And if we look at the areas that have the most profound need, we see areas like diabetes, which of course is a major concern in your own geography, but also growth of areas like neurological disorders, of course, cancers, cardiovascular disease, many of these lifestyle-related diseases that offer us quite a bit of opportunity. And we see that the disease burden in many of the older diseases that come along with civilization development in areas like maternal health and in areas such as infectious disease and HIV/AIDS, have been more addressed than they have in the past. And of course, the overall level of disease burden in those areas will in fact actually decline in the coming years, a tribute to modern medicine and in particular to our industry. Flip the page for me, please. With that, of course, though, on the other side, as we've seen people living longer, they're not necessarily living healthier. In fact, if you look across the various geographies that we've studied, we actually see that less than half of that increase in life expectancy in the last several years is actually what we would consider high quality life, and that many of our aging colleagues and aging relatives actually don't experience the same level of enjoyment at that time. So as our population ages, we do need to continue to ensure that evolution and that increase in expectancy is commensurate with a prolonged experience of life, which gives us tremendous opportunity as an industry to continue to evolve. Now, if you keep going forward for me, again, it is a tremendously exciting time to be in our industry. And many of the previous speakers have referred to the shift in the underlying understanding of biology. And we can only, of course, celebrate what we've done from a vaccine perspective in the last several years here in addressing the pandemic and the propagation of the vaccine technologies that will continue to grow. But of course, we're very excited about some of the new omics, some of the new molecular technologies that will enable the shift towards personalized medicine, the prospects of CRISPR, the cell therapy and regenerative medicine ideas that will come across with technologies like CAR-T, with gene editing, will allow us a new level of biological advancement that will truly be exciting in the industry. That will also be enabled by a number of the other techniques, quantum computing, the advanced surgical procedures, the artificial intelligence. All of these enabling technologies will allow us to get to another level of impact on the life sciences world. And so with those different technologies, we can't be more excited about the direction that it's going in. You can already see, if you flip forward a page for me, that there is a dramatic shift in the pipeline of innovation in our industry. In fact, now today, if you take the entirety of the pharmaceutical industry, over 40% of pipelines have shifted to the new innovative therapies that we just discussed. In fact, almost 15% are now in what we would characterize as this third wave of innovation, which is related to the biorevolution, with areas like CAR-T cell therapy, stem cell therapy, gene therapy, and RNA-based therapeutics. With that shift, of course, will come dramatic innovation in our industry. Now, that innovation is also being fueled by a level of funding which we've never seen before in this industry, if you continue forward for me. And so here are just three simple measures of the funding that we are seeing. On the left is VC funding, where we've seen almost a 50% increase to almost $37 billion worth of VC funding flowing into the biotech industry. In the middle, if you look at deals, we've seen over $170 billion worth of transactions, which are larger companies investing in bringing the technologies that smaller companies are inventing into the commercialization sphere. And then on the far side, you see the level of new IPOs, where we've seen almost a 200% rise. So early stage companies accessing capital through the public markets, where we've seen over $34 billion worth of funding flow into these early stage companies. And there have been nearly 1,000 new biotechs formed even in the last year, which is a spectacular amount. Many said about 5 years ago that the biorevolution was over, and I think what these statistics tend to show us is the biotech revolution is in fact just beginning. If you flip forward one more for me, just thinking about the expansion of the ecosystem that this has brought along. Now, this chart shows you the launches by year that are projected, that have taken place over the past several years by the experience of the companies. And what you can see is that almost 40% of new launches now are being conducted by companies that have never launched a product before or are on their second or third launch, which just speaks to the groundswell of innovation that is happening in our industry. So it is a spectacular time for India to be considering what can happen in the life sciences sector by harnessing the technology, bringing the capital, and embracing the entrepreneurship that can bring our industry to the next level of performance. So let me shift in topics, if I can, from there to what it actually takes to build a vibrant innovation ecosystem. And it was really impressive and amazing to hear the commitment of all the different government ministers, to hear the commitment of so many esteemed doctors and inventors and entrepreneurs to upping India's game overall. And I thought we might be able to share a few best practices if we could. So flipping forward to the next page here, we were able to, as McKinsey, to spend some time looking at the different clusters that drive the bulk of research in the landscape of life sciences. And of course, you're all familiar with where these clusters exist, be it the London and Oxford and Cambridge cluster, or what we see in the Bay Area, or what's been going on in Boston over here in the States, certainly Israel and Switzerland, Singapore being one that will draw a lot of inspiration from through the course of this discussion. And of course, what's happened in Japan and China closer to your region. Each of these clusters has been able to create an ecosystem of innovation that is propelling forward the biotech and biopharma sphere. And so what we did is try to characterize what the different building blocks, if you'll advance one page for me, and what has made these different clusters successful. And we'll highlight 5. The first is an enabling regulatory and policy landscape. The second is the funding and having a robust funding support base. The third is the research talent pool, which many of my previous speakers have referenced. And the fourth is the high quality research by the anchor institutions that are collaborating with industry. I was very happy to hear those themes brought out by the prior speakers. And the fifth being the high quality infrastructure that makes it easy for these for this ecosystem to emerge and grow and develop. So let's click through each of those if we can, starting with this idea around the enabling regulatory environment. And there's really 3 things at the end of the day that we've seen here. The first is just the clarity and consistency of a high quality review process. And it was really encouraging to hear before from Dr. Aparna the idea that the government was moving towards a much more transparent regulatory process. And that truly is what the other geographies have shown us. The US has very detailed guidelines, has pre-post approval meetings, a very consistent panel of experts in each of the therapeutic areas that enable that transparent process. Israel has a very similar approach. You know, in the USA alone, there's over 600 defined guidelines and checklists. They're very transparent. You know, the quality of the experts that are reviewing the applications is very high. And we've gone to great extents in particular to streamline that regulatory environment and make sure that it is you know, something that the industry feels that it can navigate. The second is this idea of timely approvals. And if you look at some geographies that have moved on this front, Japan has been quite strong in what they've done in particular, and they've used augmented capacity in their system to be able to get to another level. In fact, they now expanded their evaluation team by nearly 2x to be able to bring down the time that it takes to review an application by 2.5 times. And as a result, the new drug approval timelines have fallen from 22 months to 10. So the first idea is an enabling regulatory and policy landscape. And it sounds from our prior speakers in particular, we'll get back to this in a couple of minutes, that India is well on its way on that front. The second idea, if you flip the page for me, is that the robust funding support must be in place. And that funding takes several forms. Direct governmental funding, heavy private investment, and a vibrant VC and private equity environment that attracts external funding. And if you look at the actions of other geographies and what they've done to do it, you know, the US has done quite a bit, of course, on the direct government funding through the NIH and other agencies, which we're all aware of. But if you look at what other governments like the UK and Israel have done, they have created incentive for private industry to continue to invest. And they've done so with tax credits the super tax deduction on R&D that the UK has in place, which can extend to up 230% for these small and mid-sized businesses and 140% for others, provides an incentive for companies to continue to invest in R&D. Israel has also a similar incentive where 85% of qualified research expenses can be used in an R&D grants fashion through the Track 35 program. So real incentives in place for companies to continue to invest at high levels in R&D. You can also look to the VC environment and the ways that geographies like Israel and China have attracted external or used governmental funding to be able to advance the VC funding levels. And certainly if you look to Israel and the USMA initiative between 1993 and 1998, the government actually offered to provide 40% of the money that was required to create these combined funds. Now, over time, that mix, of course, has shifted more to the private sector as the ability to fund itself has been achieved. And China, of course, has created an enormous program around their biocentury idea and has provided up to 50% of the capital that is available in the VC pool through governmental funding. So this funding environment is absolutely critical. Now, as we highlighted a few minutes ago, the good news is there's plenty of capital for us to be able to access. Continuing forward, let me talk about for a minute the strong research talent pool. And if you think about what the world faces in terms of the shortage of biologists, it's quite profound today. In fact, if we just total the number of biologists that are available in the U.S. and in Europe, we have only 15,000 PhD graduates that are entering the workforce on average every year, and that's PhDs in biology. There's over 30,000 job openings in the U.S. alone for biologists. And so the competition for this talent base is quite dramatic. And so being able to win that war for talent and to develop the talent base locally that is going to be required to fuel this is absolutely imperative. And we look to inspiration from other geographies again, and how you can develop these anchor institutes and attract experienced overseas talent and enhance the quality of local talent. And just to highlight a few, Singapore actually has used their National Science and Technology Review Board or National Science and Technology Board to recruit experienced foreign researchers. They provide 50% of the funding for relocation, for salaries, for postdocs, for postmasters fellowships to be able to draw folks back in. And China, of course, has gone to great extents with their 1,000 Talents plan that has expanded the level of funding and has also now attracted over 250,000 Chinese researchers who are trained in geographies like the US and Europe back into China to be able to perform that. And certainly, the level of involvement of so many Indian researchers in these geographies is incredible, and it's now time to potentially bring them back home. Let me finish off by looking at the last two, if we can, on the next page here, the collaboration between academia and the industry and the high quality infrastructure requirements. And if we would just point to three things: the policies to promote academic research, the platforms to bring academic research to market, and the vibrant ecosystem to promote plug and play and financing support and make it easy for these different entities to get off the ground. If you look at the academic research and the policies to support it, a lot of this comes down to IP protection. And in the US, we had the Bayh-Dole Act, which enabled researchers, even if they were leveraging government research, to be able to apply for IP protection. If you look at the inventors' laws that have been in place in Germany, a very similar outcome in terms of being able to enable a clear path for research to translate to IP. And then you can also look to other inspirations, such as what Singapore did with the Biopolis Research Hub, which was designed to attract top talent and has been so successful. If you look there, they have now 9 research institutes with over 2,000 researchers. They have 40 corporate research labs from Novartis, GSK, Merck, Abbott, All sorts of these corporations have decided to co-locate there. And they also, of course, have now two top 200 life sciences institutes in the NUS and the NTU that are bringing together the academic side with the industry. And all of that was created by creating a turnkey environment in the Biopolis, which made it easy. The Biopolis, which made it easy for these companies and the academicians to come together in a very vibrant and exciting area. So those are the 5 things that we see that are really required to be able to create an environment where biotech can flourish and take off. So I thought I might close then by offering on the next page here, if you would allow me, just a few reflections for India as you accelerate your progress on this innovation journey. And the first thing to highlight is how far you've come. And India has one of the most exciting life sciences industries on the globe. The first thing to say is you have over $40 billion now in US dollars in terms of sales from your Indian pharmaceutical sector, which is just an incredible statistic to think about if you think about the growth that has been achieved. You have over 20 companies now that have a market cap over $1 billion, and you were first in the number of US FDA approved plants outside the US with 665. You have a strong and established local industry that is making a very impressive improvement in terms of its impact on health. You've seen a 36% reduction in the disease burden in India as a result. You've seen a 37% enhancement in the access to affordable treatments, such as in the AIDS sphere. And you've also satisfied over 60% of the global vaccine demand pre-COVID, which is a pretty amazing impact that you've had on the broader landscape. That has created an enormous amount of economic contribution, over 2.7 million jobs in the industry in India, and over a $13 billion contribution to the Indian annual trade surplus in 2019. So India has a very vibrant life sciences industry upon which to build. If you move to the next page, at the same time, your challenge and your opportunity at this point is now to move from being the pharmacy of the world to being the innovation hub of the world. And if you look at where you are today, you've had an amazing set of impact on generics. You're increasing your impact on the incremental innovation in our industry, but you're not yet a powerhouse in terms of driving innovation and introducing new entities. And that is where we all have been saying that the opportunity lies, and the shift can have, and you will, by doing so, be able to continue to reduce disease burden. You'll create high-skilled, white-collar jobs, and you'll scale up your contribution to the Indian economy if you continue to pursue that route. So I thought we might close by offering you just 4 simple reflections as you continue to contemplate as an industry and a community on how you can continue on that path. The first is maintain the alignment that is clearly emerging in this group, and that alignment needs to be between the industry as the leaders and many of the innovative aspects, between the policymakers, who has been really encouraging and inspiring already in this discussion to hear the commitment from the various policymakers to making this all happen. The funders that we described before to be able to bring the capital to be able to do it. And we draw a lot of inspiration from what we've seen in the NASSCOM Innovation Conclave on this front, which just demonstrates that this can be done in India in particular. And what NASSCOM has done with the launch of the AI Game Changers program to promote artificial intelligence, AI-led innovation in the country is truly inspirational. The partnership with Microsoft there has allowed these 2 groups to work closely to develop and promote the AI Game Changers program and to recognize innovators for their successful AI implementation. And you've also set up this Future Skills Prime initiative in partnership with MEDI to upskill talent in emerging technologies and cloud skills. And the program is going to reskill almost 2 million professionals and employees in the industry over a period of 5 years. And that just shows you what alignment can and commitment across these stakeholders can achieve. So just look to that group for inspiration, and let's make something similar happen here within our own life sciences sphere. The second thing to say to you is it's a crowded space, and it'll be really important that you understand and you figure out how India can actually differentiate itself within the broader landscape of biopharma. And the reason we say that is, we talked about the 1,000 biotechs earlier. We talked about the level of funding. We talked about what the top 20 to 50 pharmacos are doing in this space. And each of those companies also has a desire to continue to grow. And India, as it enters into this sphere, is going to have to figure out what it is going to do to be able to differentiate itself. You did so in generics in terms of being able to achieve a level of cost structure that no one else in the world could achieve. In this, it could be time to market, it could be the level of innovation, it could be the pace of innovation, it could be embracing new technologies like cell and gene therapy, and being able to become a powerhouse in an area like that. But I think it's going to be really critical to the success of this initiative to decide where it is that India will lead and recognize that this is a competitive sphere. The third to say is, tackle all the building blocks that we just discussed. If we could highlight two, it was really encouraging, of course, to hear the commitment on the regulatory front and to hear Dr. Aparna talk about the various ways the government is going to address the transparency in that system. And that certainly is table stakes and super critical to your continued advancement. But the two that we would highlight would be the talent pool, and the second being this idea of creating this industry, academia, and startup environment that will enable you to advance rapidly. And on the talent pool front, India is a powerhouse with the different IIT organizations and universities that will produce talents, but truly getting to the next level and attracting more of your expats that have now trained outside of India back into the geography, and creating an environment and an excitement amongst the researchers out there to be able to extend to the next level is an area I think that you can really spend some time considerably as a group figuring out how you can augment that talent base in a highly competitive world. And the last is this idea of how do you start with industry, academia, and the startups coming together. And we drew some inspiration in particular from what the TCS Coin or the Co-Innovation Network has done in creating this environment where an industry-led consortium came together with a whole set of academics, technocrats, venture capitalists, who will now co-fund, co-create, and develop unique ideas. There's over 300 VCs, 2,000 startups the TCS Coin network has brought together with 50 universities, 90 professors, and draw some inspiration from that as you figure out how you can get to started, but also look to the leaders in our own industry here to be able to play a leading role. And the last idea for you is just stay committed. It is going to be a multi-year long journey. You're going to have to take a phased approach in terms of how you approach it. But this is an environment in India that is just incredibly vibrant, and I could not be more excited to watch what you all do over the next many decades. So again, thank you for having me today. I look forward to continuing to be involved with IPA, and McKinsey is proud to be your longtime partner.